Thursday, March 15th.
Alexa, what time is it?
The time is 9:22 a.m.
Alexa, turn on light 1.
Okay.
All right, we were talking about Mesopotamia and the relationship between age and survival chances of a society. Um, uh, they all collapse eventually. Um, so, uh, I'm going to show you the pooled experience of Rome, classical Mayans, and the Anasazi. The Anasazi nowadays are called the ancestral Pueblans. I'm not sure that the Anasazi in this group were ancestral to anybody who's now alive, but if that's what we're supposed to do, that's fine. But my sources call them Anasazi. Rome's tricky. It survived a long time in name, but there kept being regime changes, like the rise of the emperors and the rise of the tribunes, the fall of the republic, and that sort of thing. Got my information from the BBC. Don't have my source for the classical Mayans. Anasazi got from this collapse of complex societies. Asking the right question doesn't have the right clue. Um, as before, the graph's horizontal axis is the age of the empires pooled in 50-year increments, and the vertical axis is the chance that society has of making it another 50 years. Does it look familiar? Yeah. It varies tiny bit in the amount of curvature. Again, there's 300-year brick wall of a society started as virtually indestructible. If civilizations fell because of outside forces, it would have nothing to do with the internal workings of the population. The line would be horizontal. If there are multiple factors, the line would be noisy. If it always fell because of interior forces or some one interior force within the population, the line would go up because you'd get selection, and the weaker, less resilient civilizations would perish first. What you have left would have a better survival value, but the line goes down. It has to be the very fact of a large cooperating community of people. Okay, fine. Yeah, if you had a monastery, yeah, the rules are going to be different. But I mean, but a monastery can only survive as part of a larger civilization. So we're talking about the whole civilization. And when they go, the monasteries go along with any other holy places. So it's what we've seen before. Yet, okay, there's a little overlap between these numbers and the previous ones because Rome did get into Mesopotamia. And when that happened, there's a chance that it was a regime change both in Rome itself and in Mesopotamia, but the Anasazi, or ancestral Pueblans, if you prefer, and the classical Mayans, no, they're halfway around the world. And it's the same curve. It's something very characteristic of humans. Now, it may not be that the whole population dies out. Maybe it's just the administrative class. The educated people that a society needs to survive. But there's no earthly explanation other than collapse of the birth rate, because we've seen it, nothing else except the very fact of that society existing causes it to collapse. Now, it's going to look a little bit different other times, other places. Um, it would be nice to have some professor of history look at these things. Um, uh, I've had no luck getting one to look at the numbers. Um, and I find that incredible. Suppose you spent your whole life, your professional life, you're sitting in the mouth of a cave and watching what goes in and comes out. Sheep goes in, a lot of roaring comes out, no sheep. All right. We postulate a bear. Bats come and go. Bears come and go, and that's seasonal. Um, and then somebody comes along and says, "Hey, how would you like to walk inside and look around?" To me, that would be irresistible. So historians who spend lifetimes hardworking, really disciplined men, guys that make me look sick in terms of discipline and productivity and sticking to their task. Um, uh, they just shrug it off. I mean, top of the line, Harvard professors, tenured, they just shrug it off. It does not ring any bells. Uh, I don't know how they survive and are able to ignore this. Okay, a little personality. Always dreamed copiously. Still do. I mean, I would spend more time dreaming than being awake. When I was young, my dreams are sweeter. Yeah, they were nicer, but I won't complain. My the frustrations I get in dreams now are not as intense as the frustration of what I find doing my waking life. But I don't get those real sweet dreams. A downside of dreaming was you wake up and I'd wish to return to the dream. Well, good, I'm sure that's not rare, but sometimes I get the same wistful yearning that would strike me when I was wide awake and no dreaming remembered. I asked my parents what it was. I don't think they understood any better then than I do now. I assumed it was something to do with youth and I'd outgrow it when middle age arrived. I still occasionally would get it sometimes when I was quite preoccupied with things of immediate importance. Reading films. Like a whole stack of films, and I'm going at it, hour after hour, hammer, hammer, hammer. And then I'd get this kind of wistful longing. Yeah, wistful longing to go take a nap, maybe. But that wasn't what it felt like. It wasn't sleepy. It was just this kind of yearning. I think Edgar Allan Poe um, uh, recognized it and tried to describe it. Maybe other poets of that century. Um, uh, like being homesick of something that had never happened. Um, okay, one time I was up to my ears in worrying about the health of United States Vietnam veterans. To cut it short, at one point at least, it looked like coming home was more dangerous than going to war. They were dying faster at home after returning from combat than they died in combat, point on a patrol. That deserves its own talk, but obviously, the notion war is a bad thing seems pretty clear. They're dying because they remember having fought. They don't die in the fight. They can handle that. All right. So combat's bad. So Saddam Hussein asked the U.S. ambassador, I read this in the mainstream news, whether it'd be okay to go into Kuwait and take the oil fields. Well, the United States has been trying to get permission to put a military base in Kuwait, but Kuwait says it now. So instead of our ambassador saying, "You try that and we'll blow you to smithereens," he said, "Arab borders are Arab business, not our problem." Well, Kuwait was overrun. The United States moved troops into Saudi Arabia, and then one day they went in to drive Iraq out of Kuwait. That's what I remember, and that's my point. That you may fault me on the facts locally. Um, but while I was lying there thinking, there's this unnecessary war, and you perfectly well out war, terrible war is for all concerned. Why? Why do people put up leaders that hates outsiders enough to start wars? It's got to be a selective event. It's got to be biological. It makes no sense in any other context. Maybe societies, biggish ones, get unstable because they're big and have a big mating pool. How long does society last anyway? Was there a clue in that? I was going to put together the numbers, and there was that first graph you saw. Well, I have never recovered emotionally. That sweet, wistful feeling, dreaming moments vanished, nothing, gone. Nothing's left but the need to win, the need to warn the world. It one glance at the graph, and I said, this is more important than anything I've ever done. So anybody can look at those graphs and not be totally captivated and should basically center their life around working the implications out. I really don't know.